That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Okay, good morning, and welcome to Sunday School. I am your teacher this morning for today's Sunday School lesson. I appreciate everyone that's joining us this morning, this beautiful fall morning here in North Texas. I hope it's nice where you happen to be. We're going to continue in our series that we've been doing on the dynamics of survival, the principles that guide the possibility for humanity to survive as individuals, and all the dynamics that go into that. Today, we're going to deal with the fourth dynamic, and that fourth dynamic is survival as mankind, or survival as a species. I played for you Carl Sagan's The Pale Blue Dot at the beginning of the class this morning. And I played that so that we can highlight the good morning. I want to say good morning to you, Conchita. Thank you for joining us this morning. Apologies for my late getting to that chat area, but I want to say good morning. If anybody wants to join on the chat, you can. But as I said, I played Carl Sagan's The Pale Blue Dot as a point to start the conversation with respect to our survival as a species or as mankind. Now, we did survival as an individual, and we did survival as a group, and survival as a group constitute, or survival as a family, or the future, I should say. That's the second dynamic, survival as the future, which includes your family, which is actually your family. And then the third dynamic was survival as a group, which is kind of like beyond the family, talking about cultural groups, religious groups, baseball teams, things like that. That's survival as a group. Now we're broadening our dynamic analysis by talking about survival as a species of humanity, a species of mankind. Do you know that you actually do have an interest in mankind or humanity surviving? And survival as a species is the urge towards survival. And when we talk about survival, we're not just talking about eking out a living that barely getting by. When we speak of survival, we're talking about all the levels of survival, from barely surviving to thriving, which is the higher levels of survival. So some can be barely surviving and some can be thriving, and thriving is the ultimate survival. And so we're saying that survival, again, is the urge towards surviving through mankind and as mankind. You have an interest, we have an interest, all of us have an interest in mankind's survival. We played The Pale Blue Dot to illustrate that point. The Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot was when the Voyager 1 got about 4 billion miles out or something like that. I forget the exact number that it had gotten out. And before it went into interstellar space, Carl Sagan convinced NASA to turn the camera towards Earth. And when NASA turned the camera towards Earth, Earth was just a pale blue dot the size of a pixel. And on that pale blue dot lived everyone you have ever known or thought about or considered or been in a relationship with it. You go back to the beginning of the program today, you'll see that everybody, from conquerors to sages to saviors to whatever the case is, everyone you have ever known, you have known as a result of their being on the pale blue dot. So we have an interest in the pale blue dot and an interest in one another, and an interest in one another's survival. So the survival as mankind, as I said, is through mankind and as mankind. And this goes beyond nationhood. This goes beyond national boundaries. See, for example, America would be under the dynamic of the group. You see, so, but this is talking about survival beyond the group. This is talking about survival as a species. You see, so the nations, the groups, the individuals together make up the species. And so that's what we're talking about. All men and women, because they are men and women, seek to survive as men and women and for men and women. And so this is the species that we're referring to when we refer to the survival as humanity. The entire population, the entire species is what we're referring to. Now, apart from beliefs and religions, this is what we're saying. I'm kind of laying this foundation. This is apart from your belief, apart from your religion, apart from your cultural variations or your spiritual doctrines. You have an interest in the survival of humanity, no matter their beliefs, their cultural variations, or their religions, or their locations. In fact, the spiritual books that we have before us, and there are many, all seem to validate the point, though you don't need the spiritual book to validate the point, that we have an interest and that we are of one species. And for example, in the Bible, in Genesis 1, it talks about the creation story and how man and male and female were created together. And then you have that story in the Bible of people mating and mankind growing. In the Quran, it speaks about, this is the book of the Muslims, the spiritual book of the Muslims, it speaks about all are of one blood. And so this is an obvious point. Whether or not this is said by a religious book, it's an obvious point that we are of one blood. In my spiritual oracle that I use, of course, in Miracles, it recognizes all as brothers. Regardless of what they think, regardless of how they feel, all are brothers. And that's my spirit. But these are all obvious points, you see. And when I say all our brothers, we're not just saying males. We're using just the masculine form of the whole dynamic. When we say all our brothers, you could just as easily say all our sisters. You could just as easily say that. So it's obvious that we are one race, one species, one race. Now, we have gotten caught up, and this may step on some toes, but get a Band-Aid. We have been cleverly moved into thinking that there are many races of mankind, that there are many races of humanity, but there isn't. There is only one human race. Even though we have various forms, there is only one human race. There are various forms of felines, going from cats to lions to tigers to jaguars. These are all variations in that one race of felines. And so likewise, humanity follows the same rule. There's only one race. There is not a white race. There's not a black race. There's not an Asian race. There's not a Hispanic race. These all are part of groups under the general designation of humanity. There are not many races of humanity. There's only one race of humanity with varying cultures, varying religions, varying beliefs, and none of the beliefs or cultures or variations are superior to or inferior to any other. And so when you come at it from that point of view, you are able to respect your brother and understand that he is your brother, just like a flower of many different a bed of a bouquet of flowers have many variations of flowers in it. So likewise is humanity. Humanity is one species, one blood. This is the truth, with variations of religions, of cultural beliefs, of customs. And it is only when a superior ideology appears that humanity, though humanity sees the rest of the creation functioning under the idea of one species, of one race of that species, a separation somehow has occurred. And as a result of this separation or perceived separation, it's not a real separation. It can't be. And the reason that it can't be a real separation is because of what we talked about before. You can mate humanity between a black person, a white person, a Hispanic person, and notice that still children and more humanity is born as a result of that. Therefore, you see, you can't mate with a dog and produce a human. So we're saying here that there is only one species, and I'm interchanging that word species of humanity with race. There's only one race of humanity. And the variations are variations based on the group dynamic, which is the third dynamic, the group. And so how, knowing all of this, that humans start to think of themselves as different races? How did we get there? See, when you say a different race, you're saying that you don't have a common ancestor, that you have a different ancestor from the rest of humanity. You have a different group from the rest of humanity, but not a different ancestor from the rest of humanity. And this is where humanity is going as we see this change taking place on the planet. The upheaval of the separation ideology, which we all are suffering from, is being displaced, and all of creation is taking another evolutionary step towards the reality that we have just been talking about here with this oneness idea. There is no other in reality other than oneness. It just isn't. But we all have been shapen to think that there is, even though it's obvious that there isn't. So how did this separation occur? A seeming belief or a seeming conduct with one another that we are not of one blood and of one race. How did that occur? A Course in Miracles call it a tiny insane thought somehow was introduced into the family, and this tiny insane thought grew, thinking that it was separate from the rest of humanity, and those who took part in that tiny insane thought also think that humanity is actually separate and that creation is actually separate from each other or from itself. So how was this introduced? How was this tiny, insane thought? It's so tiny that the Course in Miracles says that it's the smallest ripple on an ocean, that you wouldn't even notice this thought in reality. It is like the one little bit, one molecule, one photon, I should say, one photon of light calling itself the sun. This tiny, insane thought of separation. How did this occur? And how does it look? I'm going to say I'm going to ask the question, how does it look, rather than dealing with how did it come about? Because that's such a huge question that I am not in a position to answer. But I can show you how it manifests and show you the insanity of it, though you may not believe it, though you see it in manifestation today. If you turn your Bible to the book of Genesis, chapter 11, there is an interesting story in this book. You can find the examples of this tiny mad thought in other books, but I'm familiar with the Bible. And though I'm familiar with A Course in Miracles and Quran, I'm most comfortable with it coming out of the Bible because of the culture of people who I'm talking to. You see? But let me show you an example of when this tiny mad idea of separation entered into humanity and how it manifested and what it looks like. It is the responsible party for the wars. It is the responsible party for the double dealing and the murder and theft. This tiny mad idea that entered into the thoughts of the human species. How did it get there? And what are its manifestations? Turn your Bible to Genesis chapter 11, and let me show you something here that's very interesting that will point this out, and you're going to be surprised, or you may be surprised. Genesis chapter 11 and verse 1, check this out. Check this out. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass that as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, now this is the earth, the humanity, and the earth. Not just people, but the entire creation is involved in this story. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Verse 3, and they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime they had for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men built. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and therefore confound their language, that they may not be understood one, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build a city. Therefore the name of it is called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. From this did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. Humanity is one, naturally one. Where did this separation come from, and how does it manifest itself? So if you notice, starting from the beginning here, it says that the earth was of one language. They were communicating as one. When humanity communicates, that's how you get to know one another, by communication. You get into an argument with your spouse, and the first thing that occurs is the breakdown of communication. And once the communication is broken down, you notice you will go your separate ways. You will go into a room, or this one will go into another room, or some will take a walk. When you are one language, meaning when you are communicating, you have peace. You are of one speech, meaning one idea, one principle is guiding your thinking. You can have variations of perceptions, but if you have one principle guiding your thinking, then variations in perceptions will not be harmful, but will be complementary. You can still have your variation and still be complementary to the whole. And so the whole earth was of one language and of one speech, complementing each other and understanding each other. And it came to pass, as they began to spread out in this oneness, they started saying to one another, we're going to have to make a brick and mortar and build us a tower and a city that reminds us of our oneness. Why did they need a reminder of their oneness? Think about this. They said, we're going to go build this tower because we need a reminder of our oneness. And why? You can see this. We're going to build a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Now, why did they have to do that if they were of one language? They had to do that because this tiny man idea was beginning to introduce itself into the minds of humanity, and they took this step in order to make sure that the communication stayed open. And this city and this tower was the symbol of that communication. It was a reminder that we are one species, one race. Even though we're going off and spreading out and varying, this city, this tower is a reminder of our oneness. So they said, we got to build this and make a name, or else we're going to be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. This city and this tower was the communication, the symbol of their communication. Now look what happened. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men built. And the Lord said, look. Now who is he saying this to? Number one, he says, behold, the people is one. Notice people is, both singular. The people is one. He says, behold, the people is one. Who is he telling to look at this? The Lord is talking to somebody saying, look at this. The people is one, and they have all one language. They were getting along. And this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them. Why wouldn't nothing be restrained from them? Nothing would be restrained from humanity if we are functioning under a oneness. And this oneness comes from the fact that humanity is by nature one. By the physical manifestations, one. And so this Lord is recognizing, and he's telling whoever it is he's talking to, that this recognition, he says that they will be one, nothing will be restrained, they will stay one, this thing will be a reminder, and they'll be able to do anything that they imagine as a result of oneness. Now, I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, that evil cannot be one. Evil is scattered, separated. Evil cannot be one. But this Lord is recognizing that they are one. You see, the Creator is one. If you say that there's one Creator, then this one Creator has to create out of this oneness. If he's confused and confounded, then he will create a hodgepodge of confusion. So he says, behold, they are one. They all have one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. So when you are in communication and harmony with your spouse, there's nothing. When you are in communication with your family, there is nothing that can stop you or restrain you. And when humanity is in communication with itself, there's nothing that humanity cannot do, that the human family cannot do. So this Lord is recognizing this, and whoever he's talking to, he's continuing to say, go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Do you know that the word confound is synonymous with the word confusion? And in the Bible, it says that God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. So therefore, confusion wrecks peace. God is not the author of confusion. The word confound means confuse. Let us confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. When you don't understand what a person is talking about, you are out of communication with that person. And when you are out of communication with that person, you are at war with that person. This Lord is confounding them so they don't understand one another's speech. And from that confusion comes war. You begin to see each other differently. Do you notice how when people go to war with one another, when nations go to war with each other, they begin to ridicule them? They call them Crooked Joe, Crooked Hillary. You see, they call them Nazis. They call them all these different names because they're no longer communicating. So they begin to define their brother with something that they don't want to be. And this is where war comes from. So he says here in verse 7, go to, let us go down, and there confound or confuse their language, that they may not understand one another. Coming from confusion, in the Bible it says, when it's confusion, every evil work comes from that. And God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. So there has to be a different dynamic operating for peace to occur. There is no such thing as a false peace. It's either peace or it's not. There ain't no false peace. Ain't no such thing as a false peace. Because that which is false is not true, and that which is true is not false. There is no such thing as a false peace. You either got peace or you don't. So throw that out. Let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So when he talk, he don't know what he's talking about. So the Lord scattered them abroad from this. Now they were going spreading out naturally, but they were spreading out naturally, understanding that we are one. But we want to go this way with our little group, and you want to go that way with your little group, but we are one. And because this thought is creeping in, we need to build a reminder, because we don't see each other as much as we did when we were all in the same spot. But we need a reminder of the fact that we are one as humanity, as brothers, as blood, as creation. We are one. So the Lord scattered them from thence, from the tower building. He scattered them from the tower building upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. And that's why it's called Babel, because the Lord there confused the language of all the earth. That's why it's called Babel. Because this third party from humanity came to humanity with a thought, an unseen party. There is a law called the third party law. And anytime there's confusion, and anytime there is people are confounded, people are fighting each other, there's always an unseen third party hidden that's introducing the confusion to the situation. This story outlines the third party law. This story outlines what the third party law looks like. It is somebody coming in to the group and speaking confusion. You know, he so and so and so and so. You know, he said this, that, and the other about you. You know, these people are like that. You know, these people are like that. They're eating the dogs and cats. They're eating the dogs and cats. You dehumanize them so that you will have the mentality to kill your brother. A third party instigates this. And the way you cure this is to recognize that your brother is your brother. It's the way. It's the way. You have to recognize your brother as your brother. Now, you say this is too big because we got the Jews killing the Palestinians and the Lebanese and this one and that one. We got the Ku Klux Klan, we got the racists, and they believe in all this racial stuff, racial identity. And we're doing the same thing. Every man has gotten into his little group as a separate humanity from the rest of humanity, rather than understanding that your variation, your groups only represent a variation of humanity in its manifestation, not a separate humanity from the other group of humanity. You got to hear this. You got to hear this. Because we're about to take a step past all of this madness. This is where we're going. The whole earth is going toward. And you know, when you notice confusion that seems to upset the apple cart, not the confusion of that creates the apple cart, but you ever clean your closet out of dirty clothes? You got a whole bunch of stuff piled in there. Well, when you start to clean that closet out, it looks like a mess. But you're just taking the stuff out of the closet and then you're throwing away the stuff you don't need or giving it away. And the stuff that you can still use, you neatly pile it back in the closet. But in the beginning, the closet looked crazy. Your floor around the closet looked crazy because this is coming from the cleaning of the closet. So the way to manage or handle this third party that have inserted itself into humanity's thinking and is causing humanity to think of itself as separate, and that is the only problem. There are methods to remove that from it, and you can't use the same confusion to remove the confusion. You have to use order to remove the confusion. So in this situation, we got this entity, a group of entities, because he's talking about us, so it's more than one. And by the way, if you read carefully the Bible, you will discover that in the beginning, Elohim, that word in Genesis that says God is Elohim, which means there are many of them. So I'm going to just use this, and it's kind of weird, but I'll just say it anyway. A group of so-called gods. Not one single one, but a group of gods. But because knowledge and communication have been removed from the conversation of humanity, we don't know this. I often say, if God want to kill somebody, let him do it himself. Don't let him use you to do it. You don't go into another man's land in the name of God killing. Send God to kill him. Then we will all know that it was an entity that was beyond humanity that did it. Make God do his own killing instead of you killing your brother. You cheating your brother in the name of God. You and I restricting one another in the name of Jesus. You and I sentencing each other to hell in the name of Jesus. Let Jesus do it. The only thing we need to do is love each other. And if Jesus want to fight, if God want to fight, let him fight. But you don't fight. You love. How do we do this? I'm glad you asked. We do this, number one, as I said, there are simple ways of using the third party law to get rid of confusion. You don't tolerate it. I had to do this in the organizations that I work with. I came in, no one could understand why they wasn't productive, even though it's an amazing organization with an amazing ability to effect a lot of change among young people. But the CEO recognized that there was very little production and a lot of wasteful spending, a lot of turnover, a lot of slander going on. And I brought up the fact that the first thing that has to happen is we have to begin to communicate. And we don't make others what we would not be. So we start off small. We start off with a small step. See, it's hard for us. It's difficult for me to not to think in terms of separation, because the shaping of the culture has taught us this, that we're all separate. It takes a little work. But here's how we can start off. We can start off with our families. We start off by not tolerating slander among our family. Don't designate somebody in your family to something that you don't want to be, but recognize your family as that, your family. He may have a drug problem, or she may have an alcohol problem, or they may steal, or whatever the case is. It does not take from the reality of the fact that you are of one blood. You may not be of one mind, but you are of one blood. And as you begin to relate to each other as a family and making peace between each other as a family, what will happen is the light that's in you will go to the mind of the one who may have the drug problem or may be sick, or whatever the case happens to be that irritates you. The light that's in you will reach to their minds and bring light to their minds, and that light in their mind and light in your mind will grow. And maybe the behavior will cease. And then as we do this with our families, what will happen is we will start going one family to the next family to the next family. Either you want to have peace or you want to have war. If you want to have peace, you got to use the rules and the laws of peace. And they are not the same as the rules and the laws of warfare and separation. They're not the same. You can't get peace by waging war, and you can't get war by waging peace. And so when you're organizing, just using that closet idea, it may come up, it may appear to be confusion as you are starting to straighten out stuff. And this comes with learning how to communicate one to another. I have a friend who we love each other dearly, but we have been having a difficult time in our communication styles. So it appears to be confusion. But because of our motive and our desire to communicate and love one another, slowly but surely, we're learning how to communicate. But it takes a mind that wants to, that understands or want to function as one to do that. You can't have a desire to be separate and get communication. You can't have a desire to be separate and get peace. And if you practice peace, we will get peace. If we practice war, we will get war. It's a big job thinking about it from the standpoint of all of humanity, but we can start from our families. And don't we need in our cultural variation some peace among us? Don't we need some peace among us? So we can get beyond religious dogma. Because if your religious dogma does not bring peace to your brother who has a different religious dogma, because you think he's not your brother because of your religious dogma, then you won't get no peace in heaven. You're not going to get it. In fact, you won't even get to heaven. Because it says, if you're a Christian, it says that by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one towards another. Not if you baptize a certain way, not if you speak in tongues or go to Bible class or read or tithe, not if you feed the hungry. It says in Corinthians that if I give my life, if I feed the hungry, if I work miracles but don't have love, I am nothing but a loud talking Negro. He didn't say Negro in Corinthians. But the point is the same. It was Jesus in the Gospels that said, by this, here's the standard that people will know that you are my disciples, that you follow me. Here's the standard. A new law I give to you. Here's the standard. Law represents standard. A new law, Jesus said, I give to you, that you love one another. Here's how people will know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. Brothers and sisters, it says in another place in the Bible, if a man doesn't love, he doesn't know God. Because love is of God, because God is love. So this is the standard that we working on. I don't care about your Bible reading, Reverend. If you ain't loving your brother, or you got a mind to think that you decide who is your brother, you are a tinkling cymbal. The father decides who is in the family, not the son. The father decides. The mother and father. But going from biology, the father has a designation of who is in the family, and so does the mother. Because if the mother don't become impregnated with the idea or the physical seed, the idea is the mental seed, the physical seed is the sperm. If the mother doesn't want to give birth to the child, there's no family. So you may have family members who are crazy, according to your definition and my definition. They're still your brother. As we come up on the 29th anniversary of the Million Man March, it is a reminder. It is like the tower that we built on October 16th, 1995. You saw us raid the Capitol. You saw us raid the Capitol. And we raided the Capitol with love. And after the Million Man March, the last 29 years, you've seen men step up and raise their children. Families step up and adopt children. You've seen us building. You've seen us do it. You see us have a standard. We've raised the standard as men, the standard of love. You see. That's what we're bringing to the table. So this 29th anniversary coming up on October 16th, I'm going to do a whole day of broadcasting, just memorizing and playing different speeches of the Million Man March. As we come up on this time and come up on this election and seeing what's occurring, do not be confused, brothers and sisters, by it. Because what you are watching is the story that Jesus told in the Gospels about the wheat and the tares. And if you remember the story, a good man planted this wheat in a field, and while men slept, an enemy planted tares in the field. And when the people who were supposed to be watching it woke up from their sleep, They said, well, wait a minute. Didn't you plant wheat? How did these tares get in here? The tares look just like the wheat. They said, well, we're going to pull this up. We're going to pull them all up. The good man said, no, because they look too much alike. You're going to pull up the wheat with it, and I'm not going to lose any of my wheat because I planted wheat and I'm getting wheat out of this garden. He said, we're going to let them grow together. And when they are old, when they have grown together, we will be able to distinguish the nature of the wheat and the nature, or from the nature of the tares. And we're going to first pull the tares up first and bundle them together for the fire. And then we're going to gather the wheat. Now, you think that that's talking about people, but this is hidden from the wise and the prudent and given unto babes. It's talking about your mind. And your Creator planted the same seeds in your mind, the same wheat in your mind that he planted in the mind of your brother. The field is the mind, the wheat is the thoughts that the Creator planted in your mind. He planted this wheat in your mind, and the same wheat in the mind of your brother. And this is why I'm talking about look at the wheat. Try to see the wheat in your brother, but you can't distinguish it. You know there are tares in his mind because there are tares in your mind. He know that there are tares in your mind because there are tares in his mind. And so you're trying to pull up the tares out of his mind, and he's trying to pull the tares up out of your mind, and war ensues from that. See, because the tares are aggressive. Their nature is aggression. So the tares are thoughts planted by an enemy in your mind, and the wheat are thoughts planted by the Creator in your mind. You see. And so you want to pull up the tares from your brother. You want to pull the tares out of his mind. But the Creator is saying, no, we're going to let them grow together so you can distinguish between the two. And we're going to first pull the tares up, and then we're going to bundle them for the fire. We're not talking about people. We're talking about thoughts. And what are the thoughts, brothers and sisters? The thoughts are the same thoughts of humanity and love in your mind that your father planted in the mind of your brother. Next week, we're going to talk about the whole creation. I'll be back next week.
Leave me alone, said the lonely man. I don't want to let go of this feeling. Leave me to roam, said the one